Okay.
Good morning, students. Today is the second part of coagulants and anticoagulants. Last class, I taught about classification of the classical anticoagulants, which includes parenteral and oral anticoagulants, and we learned about mechanism of action of heparin and low molecular weight heparin. In this class, we will know about the other drugs. Before starting, I will just tell the classification in detail. So, anticoagulants may be classified into parenteral and oral anticoagulants. In parenteral anticoagulants, the first drug is heparin. Second is low molecular weight heparins, which includes enoxaparin, dalteparin, ardiparin, nadroparin, rabiparin, and tinjaparin. Synthetic heparin derivatives. This includes the drugs fondaparinux sodium and idraparinux sodium. Then direct thrombin inhibitors, that is hirudin based thrombin inhibitors, which includes lipirudin, bibalirudin, and desirudin. Synthetic thrombin inhibitor, that is argatroban. And last is recombinant human recombinant protein C derivative, that is droticogene alpha. So out of this, the last class I taught about heparin and low molecular heparin. In this class, I'll teach about the rest of drugs. So this is the classification for parenteral anticoagulants. Coming to oral anticoagulants, it includes direct thrombin inhibitors, that is direct factor 2 inhibitor, which includes dabigatran, etixylate, and direct factor 10A inhibitors, which includes rivaroxaban, apixaban, bitrixaban, and edoxaban. Then vitamin K antagonist, it is again subdivided into two types, that is coumarin derivatives, which includes warfarin, then acinocumarol, dicumarol. Indanidione derivatives, which includes phenindione and aninsindione. This was over last class till low molecular weight heparin. So now we start with the synthetic heparin derivatives. The first drug is fondaparinux. It is a synthetic pentasaccharide. It causes an antithrombin 3 mediated selective inhibition of factor 10A. It does not cause direct inhibition of thrombin, that is factor 2, because of its short polymer length. And the dose is 2.5 milligram. Mostly it is given by a subcutaneous route, and by this route there is 100% bioavailability. It has got less antiplatelet action, so chance of thrombocytopenia is less. And it is mostly preferred for thromboprophylaxis of patients undergoing hip or knee surgery and pulmonary embolism. So fondaparinux, it is a synthetic heparin derivative, and it causes antithrombin 3 mediated selective inhibition of factor 10A. Then the next drug, which includes in same synthetic heparin derivative, is idraparinux sodium. So what is the difference between this drug and the previous drug, that is fondaparinux, is that it is a long-acting congener of fondaparinux. So long-acting, it is a long-acting, so we have to give subcutaneous same route and once weekly. Because of its long-acting, we are giving once weekly. Then it acts by binding with factor 10A, same mechanism like fondaparinux. Then next heparin antagonist, which is protamine sulfate. So protamine sulfate, it is an heparin antagonist too. Whenever there is an heparin overdose, to neutralize the effect of heparin, we administer this drug. So it is a low molecular weight protein which is obtained mostly from the sperm of salmon and certain other species of fish. It is strongly a basic low molecular weight protein. And it is given intravenously, it neutralizes heparin. That is 1 milligram of heparin is needed for every 100 units of heparin. So for 100 units of heparin, we need 1 milligram of protamine sulfate. It is most commonly used when heparin action needs to be terminated rapidly, example after cardiac or vascular surgery. Being basic in nature, it releases histamine, and rapid IV injection when given, it causes flushing and breathing difficulty. As we know, histamine causes bronchoconstriction, so there will be breathing difficulty, and it releases histamine. So next classification of drug is direct thrombin inhibitors. So thrombin is factor 2A. So they directly inhibit the factor 2A. So before going for classification, all should know actually what is the role of thrombin. So thrombin is a protease that performs number of functions in a hemostatic process. The first function is cleavage of fibrinogen to fibrin. So thrombin helps in cleavage of fibrinogen to fibrin. Thrombin activates factor 13, which cross-links fibrin polymer to form a stable clot. It activates platelets and it induces endothelial release of prostaglandin I2. This has been explained in the previous diagram. Hope you all remember. That is the flow chart which I have taught you in the last class. That is the fibrinolytic system. See, this is the role of thrombin. It converts fibrinogen to fibrin and again degrades the fibrin to the stable product. Now coming to classification. So direct thrombin inhibitors all are given through parenteral route, that includes hirudin, lipirudin and bivalirudin. So hirudin, it is an irreversible thrombin inhibitor. The source of hirudin is from the salivary glands of leech. Then lipirudin, it is a recombinant form of hirudin. It is derived from yeast cells and the drug is having short half-life. So what is the use of this drug? It is used as an anticoagulant in thrombotic events associated with heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. As we all know, heparin, it is a parenteral anticoagulant, but the main side effect of heparin is it has got antiplatelet action, and because of that it causes thrombocytopenia. So whenever the patient has heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, in that case lipirudin can be used as an anticoagulant. Then bivalirudin, it is a drug having rapid onset and short duration. That is, half-life is only about 25 minutes. And it is used as percutaneous angioplasty. And this is the next direct thrombin inhibitors, that is argatroban. This is also given parenterally and it is having very, very short duration. So this drug has to be given in continuous IV infusion. And the main part you have to remember is the clearance of this drug is not affected by renal disease. So this is a better choice for the patients having renal insufficiency. So remember, direct thrombin inhibitors includes 4 drugs: hirudin, lipirudin, bivalirudin and argatroban. Hirudin, you remember, it is a irreversible thrombin inhibitor and the source is salivary glands of leech. Lipirudin, it is a recombinant form of hirudin and it is mostly the source is from the yeast cells and it has got short half-life and it is mostly given as an anticoagulant in thrombotic events associated with heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. Bivalirudin, it is a rapid onset, it has got rapid onset and short duration, that is half-life is about 25 minutes and it is used as a percutaneous angioplasty. The last drug is argatobran, which is to direct thrombin inhibitor, and it is having short duration, so you have to give continuous IV infusions, and this clearance of this drug is not affected by renal disease. So it is a better choice for the patients having renal insufficiency. And the last drug, that is droticogene alpha. It is a human recombinant protein C. It is not a direct thrombin inhibitor. Of course, it is used as a parenteral anticoagulant, but the mechanism is it inhibits factor 5A and factor 8A, not direct thrombin inhibitors. That is factor 2A. It inhibits factor 5A and 8A. And the drug is having shorter plasma half-life, that is half-life is about 1.5 hours. Then that too, now we'll go for oral thrombin inhibitors. I taught you about direct thrombin inhibitors, which is given only parenteral route, that is hirudin, lipirudin, bivalirudin, argatroban, and apart from direct thrombin inhibitors, the other drug, that is droticogene alpha, this is also a parenteral anticoagulant. Now this is oral thrombin inhibitors. So as the name suggests, it is direct thrombin inhibitors, that is it inhibits factor 2 and it can be given through the oral route. So this includes the drugs, that is dabigatran, rifaroxaban, apixaban. Okay, dabigatran, rifaroxaban and apixaban. So in this dabigatran, it is a direct thrombin inhibitors, that is directly it binds to factor 2 and inhibits, whereas rivaroxaban and apixaban, they are the factor 10A inhibitors, factor 10A. Then uses of all these oral thrombin inhibitors is it is used for prevention of venous thromboembolism in patients undergoing knee replacement surgery. And the main advantage of these drugs is it does not need any routine coagulation monitoring is necessary. Okay, when you give this drug, there is no need of doing routine coagulation monitoring. Then the next oral anticoagulant is vitamin K antagonist, which includes second two subclass, that is coumarin derivatives and indanidione derivative. Coumarin derivatives includes warfarin, acinocumarol and dicumarol. Then indanidione derivatives includes phendidione. So it is used as an effective rodenticide in the past. Then mechanism of action of this oral anticoagulant is it acts by competitively inhibiting vitamin K reductase, and therefore it inhibits the synthesis of the clotting factors, that is factor 2, 7, 9, 10 by liver. This also I have explained in the last class. If you remember, there was a diagram showing the role of vitamin K in the synthesis of clotting factors. See, this is the diagram which I have explained in my last class. That is, vitamin K is necessary for the synthesis of the clotting factors 2, 7, 9, 10. Now, these clotting factors will be in a decarboxylated form, and it is biologically inactive. To get converted to biologically active, they need gamma carboxylation, and which is done by the carboxylase enzyme. And this carboxylase enzyme needs reduced form of vitamin K, that is hydroquinone form, as a cofactor. And this reduced vitamin K gets converted to oxidase form of vitamin K, that is called epoxide, and this gets back converted to reduced form of vitamin K by the enzyme vitamin K reductase. So what does the oral anticoagulant vitamin K antagonist do? That is warfarin and phendidione. They inhibit this vitamin K reductase enzyme. As they inhibit this vitamin K reductase enzyme, the vitamin K oxidase form cannot be getting converted to its reduced form. And because there is no reduced form of vitamin K available, then automatically the synthesis of activated clotting factors will be hampered. So there will be no synthesis of factor 2, 7, 9 and 10. So this is the mechanism of warfarin and phenytoin, that is they inhibit the vitamin K reductase. Okay, so this is the mechanism. They inhibits the vitamin K reductase and they inhibit the synthesis of clotting factors 2, 7, 9 and 10 by the liver. And when you give this oral anticoagulants, the effect will come only after 1 to 3 days. Why so? Even though when you give these drugs, first the clotting factor 7 will be decreased. But the main factor, that is prothrombin, that is the factor 2, will be the last one to be decreased. So there will be a biological lag of 1 to 3 days for the action of oral anticoagulants to develop. And when you give this drug, you have to do continuous monitoring by doing the estimation of prothrombin time and not the bleeding time. Then when there will be warfarin or phenytoin overdose, what is the treatment? That is vitamin K1 can be used. And in mild episodes, only stopping of warfarin is enough. And the other drugs is fresh frozen plasma or factor 9 concentration, which contains large amount of prothrombin complex, can also be infused. So this is a treatment of warfarin or phenytoin overdose. Vitamin K1 can be used, and mild episodes means only stopping of warfarin is enough. And you can also treat with fresh frozen plasma or factor 9 because it includes large amount of prothrombin, that is factor 2. Coming to pharmacokinetics, the warfarin bioavailability is 100%. That is nearly complete when administered via any route, that is oral, IV or rectal. Then coming to distribution, 99% of warfarin is bound to plasma proteins. It has got the longest half-life, that is 36 hours, and metabolized in liver, and then it undergoes enterohepatic circulation and gets partially conjugated with glucuronic acid and then finally excreted in urine. Now coming to drug interactions of warfarin, you have to remember the few drugs will interact with warfarin activity. So the drugs which increase the warfarin activity, they will lead to side effect, that is hemorrhage. And the drugs which decreases the warfarin activity, they will lead to therapeutic failure of warfarin. So we will know the few drugs which interact with warfarin. So the drugs which increases the warfarin activity and leads to hemorrhage, it includes enzyme inhibitors, that is metronidazole, chloramphenicol and cimetidine. And the second drug is the drugs which displaces warfarin from the protein binding site. As I already told, warfarin is a 99% protein bound. So which displaces warfarin from the protein binding site, the drugs are phenytoin and probenecid. So they displace warfarin and they increase the warfarin level in the blood, and indirectly it increases the warfarin activity. Then liquid paraffin. Liquid paraffin also increases warfarin activity. How? Due to emulsification action and excretion of vitamin K, leading to vitamin K deficiency. And the drugs which inhibit the gut flora and reduces vitamin K synthesis, that is broad spectrum antibiotics, that also increases the warfarin activity. So the warfarin activity is increased by the few drugs, that is enzyme inhibitors, which includes metronidazole, chloramphenicol, cimetidine. The drugs that displaces warfarin from its protein binding sites, it includes phenytoin and probenecid. Liquid paraffin increases warfarin activity because of its emulsification action, and it causes excretion of vitamin K, leading to vitamin K deficiency. Then the drugs which inhibit the gut flora and reduces the vitamin K synthesis includes broad spectrum antibiotics. Then the drugs that decreases the warfarin activity causes therapeutic failure of warfarin. So what are the drugs? That is enzyme, sorry, mistakenly I have written enzyme inhibitors. It is enzyme inducers, which includes barbiturates and rifampicin. Please correct it. It is not enzyme inhibitors, this is enzyme inducer. So enzyme inducer means it increases the warfarin metabolism, so there will be decreased warfarin level in the blood and it increases the warfarin activity. So it's not enzyme inhibitor, it is an enzyme inducers, that is barbiturates and rifampicin. Then the drugs which decreases warfarin absorption, that is antacid, sucralfate. Then which increases the synthesis of clotting factors, that is estrogen containing oral contraceptive pills. So these are the drugs which decreases the warfarin activities. One is enzyme inducers, which includes barbiturates and rifampicin, and the drugs which decreases the warfarin absorption, that is sucralfate, and the drug which increases the synthesis of clotting factors, that is estrogen containing oral contraceptive pills. Then the next is acinopomeral, which is a pomerin derivative. Half-life of this drug is 18 to 24 hours and it is having a biological lag of 2 to 3 days. Same like warfarin, it also takes 2 to 3 days for its action. And dose is 8 to 10 milligram orally first day and then 2 to 8 milligram per day for maintenance. Now coming to therapeutic uses of anticoagulants. See, all these anticoagulants, they will not dissolve the clot which has already formed. Why it is given? Only to prevent the thrombus extension, recurrence and embolic complication by reducing the thrombin formation. So it do not dissolve the clot that has already formed, but it prevents the thrombus extension, recurrences and embolic complications by reducing the thrombin formation. Heparin is used initially for its rapid onset of action, and while an oral anticoagulant is usually start simultaneously with heparin. So first drug we give is heparin initially because it has got rapid onset, and simultaneously you can start an oral anticoagulant, mostly warfarin. Then heparin is then discontinued after 6 to 7 days when warfarin has taken its full therapeutic effects. So initially start with heparin because of its rapid onset and then continue simultaneously with an oral coagulant and then discontinue heparin after 6 to 7 days once the oral anticoagulant has taken its full therapeutic effects. Then the uses, first is prevention and treatment of deep vein thrombosis. As you can see in this picture, this is deep vein thrombosis. That is, thrombosis has occurred in the vein which is situated deep. Mostly it involves the lower thighs and the lower limbs. Okay, so the prevention and treatment of deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism we are given. Why in deep vein thrombosis we give means venous thrombi are mostly fibrin thrombi. So heparin and warfarin are the drug of the choice. So prophylactically also these anticoagulants can be given to prevent the deep vein thrombosis. So in which patients mostly prophylaxis are given is bedridden patients, old post-operative cases, and patients with hip and leg fractures. Then dose of heparin is 5000 international unit, subcutaneous 8 to 12 hourly we are giving. A low molecular weight heparin, that is enoxaparin, 30 milligram subcutaneous 12 hourly. Okay, the dose of heparin we have to start with 5000 international unit, route is subcutaneous and you have to give every 8 to 12 hours. And low molecular weight heparin, enoxaparin can be given and dose is 30 milligrams subcutaneous every 12 hourly. Then second use is for an established venous thrombosis, we have to give bolus IV injection. So bolus at a time you have to give 5000 to 10,000 international units of heparin followed by IV infusion, that is 1000 unit per hour. Then warfarin is usually started with 10 to 15 milligram orally per day, and while giving warfarin you have to continuously keep a check and continuously you have to monitor the prothrombin time of the patient. And maintenance dose, you have to maintain warfarin at the dose of 5 to 7 milligram per day. Okay, so for an established venous thrombosis, start bolus IV injection, that is 5,000 to 10,000 international unit of heparin, followed by IV infusion, that is the dose of 1,000 unit per hour. And warfarin starting dose will be 10 to 15 milligram orally per day, and continuous keep a check on the prothrombin time, and maintenance dose will be 5 to 7 milligram per day. The next use is myocardial infarction. This is mostly an arterial thrombi. So usually compared to anticoagulants, antiplatelet drugs like aspirin, clopidogrel are mostly preferred. Low molecular weight heparin can be given for shorter period till the patients become ambulatory. Then unstable angina, same antiplatelet drug is first started, that is aspirin in combination with heparin, followed by warfarin can be used. Then in case of rheumatic heart disease, whenever there is arterial fibrillations, to prevent thrombosis because of these arterial fibrillations, we are giving warfarin. Then cerebrovascular disease, mostly same antiplatelet drugs are preferred over anticoagulants. So remember the uses, that is prevent thrombosis and then prevention of myocardial infarction, unstable angina, established venous thrombosis, rheumatic heart disease. Now coming to adverse effects of heparin, the most common adverse effect is hemorrhage, that is bleeding, and second is heparin has got an antiplatelet action, so the platelet count will become less than 150,000 or 50%, it will be less, so there is a thrombocytopenia, and then it also causes osteoporosis, and because of that there will be chance of spontaneous fractures, and it causes transient and reversible alopecia and hypersensitivity reactions. So bleeding, hypersensitivity reaction, thrombocytopenia are the major adverse effects of heparin. Okay, so adverse effects of heparin, remember bleeding, heparin induced thrombocytopenia, that is platelet count less than 150,000, and osteoporosis, which and because of that it leads to spontaneous fractures, transient and reversible alopecia, and hypersensitivity reactions. Now coming to adverse effects of warfarin. Warfarin is contraindicated in pregnancies, whereas heparin can be given in pregnancy because last class I told it is a high molecular weight mucopolysaccharide and it is highly ionized molecule, and we know any ionized molecule will not cross the blood-brain barrier nor the placental barrier. So this can be given in a pregnant lady, whereas warfarin, it cannot be given in pregnant lady because it has got teratogenic effect, that is it causes a congenital anomaly in the fetus, that is called fetal warfarin syndrome, which includes saddle nose, retarded growth defects of limbs, eyes and central nervous system, and transient alopecia is the same side effect of heparin. Then there will be dermatitis and diarrhea. And the common side effect to both heparin and warfarin is bleeding, that is hemorrhage. Okay, so warfarin causes teratogenic effect that is called fetal warfarin syndrome, which includes saddle nose, retarded growth defect of limbs, eyes and central nervous system. And then there will be transient alopecia, which is a common side effect to both heparin and warfarin. Then there is a dermatitis and diarrhea. Then the contraindications of heparin and warfarin is bleeding disorders. As such, warfarin and heparin, they lead to hemorrhage. So any bleeding disorders, these drugs cannot be given, and they have got antiplatelet action. So there is a risk of thrombocytopenia. So any blood disorders or the patient having less platelet count, these drugs cannot be given. In case of severe hypertension, this drug is contraindicated, and in case of tuberculosis also, these drugs are not given because there is risk of hemoptysis, that is blood thin sputum. So the contraindications are bleeding disorders, thrombocytopenia, severe hypertension and tuberculosis. Now coming to the just a summary. So what is the difference between heparin and warfarin? Both are the anticoagulant. So this is a parenteral anticoagulant, heparin, and this is warfarin is an oral anticoagulant. Coming to the chemistry, heparin is a mucopolysaccharide, whereas warfarin is a coumarin derivative. Source is, as I already told, it is the primary source is always a liver or the mast cells, but also it is derived from a ox lung or a pig intestine, whereas warfarin is mostly a synthetic source. Route of administration, heparin is a large molecular weight molecule and it is a highly ionized, so it cannot be given through the oral route because it cannot be absorbed. Any high molecular weight ionized molecule are not absorbed orally. So the next route preferred is only parenteral. So it can be either intravenous or subcutaneous. Warfarin can be given oral. Onset of action, it is rapid onset, that is immediate onset, and then warfarin, it is delayed, that is 1 to 3 days. Why it is delayed, I have already told. If you give this drug, the main factor, that is prothrombin 2, it gets depressed only after 1 to 3 days. Whereas even though when you give warfarin, the factor 7 will get depressed earlier, but the main factor, that is prothrombin, takes about 1 to 3 days to be depressed. So there is a biological lag for the warfarin action, that is 1 to 3 days. Then duration of action, heparin is 4 to 6 hours, it is 3 to 6 days. And activity, it is both in vitro, in vivo, it is in vivo only. Then mechanism is, it blocks the action of factor 10 and thrombin, that is factor 2. Whereas warfarin is, it inhibits the vitamin K reductase enzyme and inhibits the synthesis of the clotting factors, that is factor 2, 7, 9, 10 by liver. So do you remember, mechanism is very important, don't get confused. So heparin, that is a parenteral anticoagulant, it blocks the action of factor 10 and thrombin. But the more inhibitory action is towards thrombin compared to the factor 10 in case of heparin, whereas low molecular weight heparin blocks mostly the factor 2, that is thrombin. Sorry, low molecular heparin blocks mostly the action, that is the factor 10. Sorry, blocks mostly the factor 10. Whereas heparin, it blocks action of factor 10 and factor 2, but most inhibitory action is towards factor 2 thrombin, whereas low molecular weight mostly blocks the action of factor 10. Whereas warfarin, it inhibits vitamin K reductase and inhibits the synthesis of clotting factors, that is factor 2, 7, 9, 10 by liver. And antagonist of heparin, as I told, it is protamine sulfate. And warfarin antagonist is vitamin K. Variability in the response is little and there is a marked variability in the response in case of warfarin. Coming to laboratory control, when you give this drug, you have to monitor APTT, that is activated partial thromboplastin time, and then the clotting time. Whereas warfarin, you have to monitor only the prothrombin time. There is no need of monitoring the bleeding time, only prothrombin time. And INR time, that INR value should be monitored, that is international normalized ratio. Then drug interaction, heparin has got very few and almost not significant drug interaction, and warfarin has got many and significant drug interaction. I have already described in my slides the drug interaction which increases the warfarin activity, which decreases the warfarin activity. Then uses, heparin is mostly used for the initiative therapy, that is in deep vein thrombosis, to prevent pulmonary embolism. Usually heparin is given because it has rapid onset. So mostly as an initiative therapy, you can give this drug, and simultaneously you can start warfarin, and warfarin you can keep for a maintenance therapy. Thank you. So this is an important chapter. Please go through this chapter. The important questions regarding the university examination will be a classification of anticoagulant, which includes both parenteral and oral coagulant. And detailing, please read about mechanism of action of warfarin, heparin, low molecular weight heparin, and what is the advantages of low molecular weight heparin over the standard heparin, and then warfarin drug interactions. Then read the uses of oral anticoagulants and adverse effects. Thank you.